Today we're talking about scaling rapid prototyping at consumer product businesses with additive manufacturing. So please welcome our moderator, Jeff Hemenway, Vice President Business Segments at Stratasys. Jeff, the stage is all yours.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Hemenway, and I'm responsible for our key customer program here at Stratasys and across our core business units. For those that are not familiar with Stratasys, we have been in the 3D printing or additive manufacturing space for over 30 years now. Are the global leader in polymer-based 3D printing. And our solutions include technologies in PolyJet, FDM, DLP, SAF, stereolithography, which is actually a new technology. It's a programmable photopolymerization. It's very early here, and I have yet to have all my coffee. But through an acquisition that we just made of a company called Origin. And really the mission of Stratasys is, and our 2,000 team members across the world, is to really continuously work with our customer partners to develop the applications and technologies of additive manufacturing for applications that range from full color prototyping all the way through mass production. I am very fortunate to be here today with you, and I'm excited for the panelists.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emmar. I'm an industrial designer and self-taught metalsmith, currently working as a rapid prototyping manager supporting all Tapestry brands, including Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman. My experience includes various 3D workflows from 3D printing to 3D modeling and 3D renderings. And I have over 5 years experience with additive using DLP, SLA, and my goal at Tapestry is to bring the benefits of 3D prototyping, local and global, to all existing and future Tapestry brands across all categories.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. My name is Chris Rollins. I'm from TaylorMade. I'm an advanced design engineer. We have been prototyping at TaylorMade with additive for 10 or 15 years now. I sort of overhauled the operation about 4 years ago. We used to just sort of churn out lots of prints every day, which we still do. But more recently, we've started exploring different materials and, kind of the recent floodgates of additive. We have explored what that can do for us. By my title slide there, some of you may be able to guess what machine I use most often. These are some recent products that I worked on that were prototyped entirely, on our new machines. Happy to talk about some unique stuff that we did today. And goal is definitely to use additive more in our prototyping and eventually get it into some production parts. So, thanks.
My name is Dan Dempsey. I'm the engineering manager for the Manufacturing Innovation Group at New Balance Athletics. I worked as a senior additive manufacturing engineer here for about 10 years. In that time, we really made New Balance in general made a from pure prototyping, use of additive manufacturing, to unique bespoke projects to full-scale commercialization, which one of our engineers will be speaking about at a later panel today. Used all the technology, fun shoe, obviously related stuff up on the screen. Just happy to be here today.
Awesome, thank you, everyone. Obviously, these forums are a little challenging from the perspective of I'm sure we have people that are pretty new to 3D printing and additive manufacturing in the audience today, and also have some veterans that I'll bet are clear industry experts. So our questions and our discussion today will try and kind of cover the gamut. But for the panelists, I'd love for you to all kind of start with, I guess, your years of experience in additive, but to share, I guess, just to kick things off a little bit, what are your most challenging accomplishments within additive and an experience that you felt should not be repeated by somebody just entering the space? And
My biggest challenge, I would say, is to get new machinery in-house, get people on board, get people to change their, things that they've been comfortable with, which was really cool when it got rolling. And, you see some people start to want to use the machines more, talking about this transition from like a pure machine shop to machines being in the engineer's hands, engineers experimenting with different resins and different materials. That was a big transition within TaylorMade. And then I think your other question was how long I've been working with additive. I guess I started with like the MakerBot move, big shift to MakerBots, whenever that was.
Probably seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, I think I've been messing around with MakerBots since 10, 12, 8 years ago.
Nice, thank you. Tomer?
I have about 5 years experience with additive manufacturing, and I started with DLP machines. Never really used FDM, but maybe one day. My biggest challenge, I would say, is navigating the corporate structure, and adding on what Chris has said is gaining adoptions and acquiring new technologies. And once you have partners who are like hooked on your process and they see a benefit, they start wanting more. So if you print in rigid and they see the possibilities, now they want flexible. So that helps to continue getting people on board. And then something you said that you don't recommend for something to be repeated is
what's the mistake that you've made that you recommend not repeat? Do
not overpromise something you haven't tested yet, just because theoretically things could work doesn't mean they're scalable or they're going to work every time. So test your assumptions before you promise a solution.
Excellent advice. Dan?
I'll start with the last one. Never promise a timeline. Never promise a part the next day.
Give yourself some extra time.
So I've been in the field for
But Dan, it's supposed to be easy, man. All you do is put a file in, it prints out. Why not?
It comes right out of the machine. I know. Yeah.
Right.
So I've been in the field for probably 15 years, and I actually started with selective laser sintering because we were just, functional prototyping. And some of the, like I said, some of the lessons I've learned is really, if you want to, this panel being about growing a prototyping community within your consumer product business, really kind of like what Tomer said, you need to manage the rollout and understand exactly what your prototypes are going to do when you are engaging with your internal customers. Because certainly, I think everyone in this call and most of the people on the phone have broken something in their hands made with AM. And the expectations that people have when you're delivering these prototypes, it's a one-to-one experience with whatever traditional material manufacturing method they're using to make their product. And that's simply not the case. So that's definitely something to manage internally.
Yeah, so speaking of that, how do you go about, kind of question for all of you, how do you go about educating people that aren't familiar with the technology, what is possible from a prototyping perspective in terms of kind of photorealism, functional prototypes, and how do you kind of manage expectations with them as they compare kind of traditional means of prototyping versus additive? And Dan, maybe we'll let you continue on.
Yeah, sure. I usually start with one question. What do you want to do with it? Do you want something that just looks great? Do you need full color? Does it need to Pantone match? Are you doing functional testing? Is it a part of another process where it has to withstand heat or pressure application or whatever? I really try to drive into that very core need. And a lot of these technologies are complementary, right? Like selective laser sintering, FDM, SLA. These technologies aren't going to do all one thing for you. So if you have a nice palette to choose from and you know what that core need is from your customer, you can hopefully you can match a process to a material to get them what they want.
Tomer, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's very important to be transparent with your communication and explain them what are the capabilities of your machine and your resins, and even more importantly, communicate the limitations. So you try to figure out what they're going to be doing with it, and then based on their needs, you tell them, well, I can help you to get this far, but these are the limitations, for example. So if they need to paint it, you want like print, you know, you will give them a white resin or a gray resin that's easier to prime and paint. If they're reviewing a particular aspect of the prototype, perhaps you're going to plan it in a way that's like you're not putting all the supports in that area. So just talking to them and trying to understand what they need.
And Chris?
Yeah, I think my biggest strategy in that area is just kind of traveling around from meeting to meeting with my bag of tricks, so to speak. I kind of just have like a bucket of successful prints in every shape, size, and material you could want. And then a lot of times when new people are in the, you know, have a need for an additive part, they just like to squish it. They like to pick things up and break them and bend them. We got springs, you know, things that are fun to touch and say, hey, can you replicate this in my application? Has really helped people get on board with new stuff.
And from a how important I guess is let's talk about design for a minute. How important is color to your customers? Anyone?
Pretty important.
Yeah, I can kick that one off.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Pretty important for us. It's aesthetic. New Balance, we're making shoes, so probably the highest throughput RP system we run is our ProJet plaster-based machine, because it's very cheap to operate. We can get a lot of parts out quickly, and we can have near full color.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, so we bring in a lot of paint samples on golf clubs. So our traditional method was to, you know, get metal parts in and then send them out to get painted and wait for them to come back. So now that we have resins that we can paint in-house, you know, mask and paint ourselves, it's been a pretty dramatic time saver to have resins that hold paint really well. So we're doing that sort of stuff on every project.
Okay, Tomer, any thoughts?
Yeah, I currently don't use full color printers, but that's definitely a goal. But we could always complement 3D printing with visualizations, and visualization technologies are so far ahead nowadays that like you could really translate textures, colors, and it's a great complement tool for 3D printing.
And as we talk about kind of realism again from the design perspective, just appreciate your guys' thoughts, and if you can share a little bit of insight as to the value that kind of the advancement in photorealism has made in terms of kind of iteration times from a design perspective. Have you, over the last, say, three years, I would assume that you've seen kind of iteration times increase, and would like to understand kind of the impact and value that that's had with your design teams. If you can just share some comments on that or thoughts. Anyone jump in and go first? Do you find kind of the expectation with your design teams for iteration times accelerating?
Definitely. I think with all these, 3D tools, 3D printing, visualizations, it has allowed people to shorten their timelines. And what it basically does is it helps you make decisions more quickly, and it makes you make more informed decisions. So, you can either catch mistakes or move on more quickly with your ideas.
And then one thing I'd want to add there, really, it also gets you close to your customer. And by condensing your development timeline, you're reacting faster, which in, I think, all of our fields here is valuable because there's an aesthetic aspect to what we do. And trends come in and they die really quickly. And if you have a lot of product in the market that takes a long time to develop and that trend's gone, then you end up eating that loss. So where it might be difficult to really narrow in on an ROI to the process, the ability to pull yourself or your company closer to your customer is pretty valuable.
I believe the trend cycle in the fashion industry is 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I can add on there some processes that TaylorMade I found were they were hard to get into place, but once you present something to people that is faster, cheaper, better, it very quickly becomes a norm, and it very quickly becomes expected and as a part of the routine, which was cool to see for us. It kind of takes a lot of hard work to convince people that to change, but once you do, it sticks pretty quickly.
Do you guys find yourselves being pulled closer into those design cycles? And actually, Dan, as you kind of talk about closer to customer relationships, into those customer conversations directly?
New Balance doesn't want the engineers in those conversations.
Well, man, you guys can add the most value.
Yeah. Joking aside, to some extent, yeah. Not directly because, you know, the scale of New Balance and the scale of New Balance's customer, but more in line with closer to the product teams and adding some degree of like design for additive expertise into that workflow just to speed it up further. Yeah, in that capacity.
Okay. Tomer, Chris, do you find yourself getting closer to customers or the front end of that design cycle?
I would say my customers at this point are manufacturing engineers. Someday I hope it will be real people out there buying products. But yeah, we're kind of one step away from New Balance, which is, you know, one of the people we talked about a lot when we were getting started is, hey, New Balance is taking this to production. We might be there someday.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to it. It's also for us is about our mostly serving our internal customers.
Okay. So looking ahead a little bit, guys, I'm sure we all have frustrations or things that we wished would work better than others. We have a pretty good audience here in front of us, including myself, obviously at Stratasys. Over the next kind of 3 to 5 years in advancing prototyping, I guess both the kind of from a technology perspective, the impact into kind of your products, but also just kind of internally within your organizations, what do you need to continue to advance the value of additive manufacturing within prototyping? Again, both from a kind of technology perspective and even internal education or awareness, et cetera. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as to when you're thinking about the future, what do you need to be more successful and drive more value to your companies with the technology? Tomer, why don't you?
Yeah, I hope to see people in the organization see the benefits and the value for themselves. And I hope they can see the opportunities within their own processes to use additive. So we can spend less time trying to advocate for people to adopt it. I think at the end of the day, you don't work by yourself. You work to serve your cross-functional partners. And as 3D printing professionals, we don't always have visibility into their processes. And it takes a long time to uncover the opportunities for 3D printing in giant companies. So I think we could break through more effectively if everyone came to the table with ideas on how to integrate additive into their processes that they know best. Yeah.
And is that what's required to do that, Tomer? Is that you continuously working with the various teams, or how do you kind of drive this as a standard practice?
I guess it's hiring like technologically savvy people. But if that's not the case in an organization, then you just have to continue advocating for yourself and your team and the technology. It's a lot of communicating with the partners to understand their needs and trying to figure out like where 3D printing could add value to them and in their process. And it's not always the case, right? So it's not always that 3D printing is the technology that's gonna like save the world, but you want to figure out where it fits.
Okay, Chris or Dan, thoughts?
Yeah, I can jump onto that one. What do I need in the next 3 to 5 years? I would say in the prototyping space, I am really interested in some of the newer SLS stuff, mostly because of the you no longer need supports, which would be really great for some of the, we're always iterating on cosmetics. So really clean prints with no supports is cool and interesting to me. And then in the more, functional prototype space, I'm always looking for things that are new in ways to make metal and ways to make carbon fiber, which is what most of a golf club has become now, is carbon fiber and metal. So those two spaces, if there are people out there innovating in them, please find me on LinkedIn.
I just want to add, I misunderstood the question, which was about printer requirements. Simplify the post-processing. That is, yes, I totally agree with that. Huge pain point.
Dan?
More stable machines, cheaper material prices with better engineering properties. Just that small little thing would be helpful.
Well, that sounds like a person who's focused on production.
Yeah, but even on the prototyping side, right? More variable material properties get you into more applications. So if you're looking for manufacturing support, certainly rigid materials have a place for jigs and fixtures. But I think the elastomer side, when we're thinking specifically to polymers, that could use some help. When you're looking at applications like soft tooling, things like that, it's a little bit more difficult to get a fit with a low cost process.
Okay, makes sense. I've heard most of you guys talk about funding, and that's of course a challenge for every company, especially given the past 15, 16 months here of COVID. You talk a little bit about how you develop ROIs or how you justify funding for new equipment. Just help kind of share some lessons learned or best practices within your organizations, how you kind of go about developing those business cases or justifications.
Yeah, I can start that one. For us, it's a bit more of a standardized process at this point. Certainly, when someone comes into the labs and they're looking for an application or a material type with something that we can't meet, if you have 3 people in a year come in looking for that sort of thing, then you should be looking for a solution. And in that case, you go through a very traditional, create a proof of concept working with the vendor, understand the properties and the requirements from your customer or the people asking for these prototypes, and then just cost out. What would it look like if you wanted to buy these from a vendor, and what's the inflection point to bring the technology in-house? And then you go through the whole capital acquisition, and do you need a head to staff it and all that stuff. But really, I think it all starts down to figuring out if something can do what you need it to do. And then that's probably the hardest part.
And Dan, do you have to kind of look at existing processes and costs basically to produce basically the same result versus additive? Are you actually getting into comparing the old way versus the new?
Not so much as really looking at if I wanted to utilize an additive process and I didn't necessarily have the capital budget to bring it in-house, could I utilize a service provider with that process? And then as the traction or as the need for that grows, what's the inflection point to bring that in-house? Knowing that kind of cost, like trying to minimize it for your side as much as possible.
Makes sense. Chris or Tomer, thoughts?
I've found that the printer, manufacturers that I've worked with have a really good idea of what it's going to cost, and they've taken many people through that process before, and it was pretty easy in all the use cases I've seen. An inflection point has been laid out for me and say, hey, here's where it's compelling and here's where it's not, and then it's pretty easy to sell a solution that's 5x cheaper. So we've certainly moved to a few of those in prototyping in-house.
Tomer?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies can help you with calculating the ROI, but sometimes if you don't have visibility into budgets, and I guess it depends on how your organization is set up, I think you could always focus on what benefits it could bring to the organization and what values it will add to the process. And I personally encourage people to avoid promoting it as a cost-cutting tool because it kind of like drives you into a corner that's hard to back out of, and quite the contrary, it costs money, and sometimes there's a potentially high upfront cost, but it's definitely worth the investment in the long run. Also, if you can get a budget, you can try and figure out cheaper printers. It's much easier to ask for $10,000 than to ask for $300,000. So you could start small and make a recommendation for a lower cost printer, explain them what the printer is capable of, but even more important, explain them what the limitations are. And this will give you an opportunity to prove the process and prove the concept and get them used to working this way. And once their needs grow, then you could start making recommendations for more advanced systems.
Yeah, makes sense. All of you mentioned outsource partners and kind of starting with a service provider that they can make parts kind of help you prove it out and build a business case. Hopefully we didn't just lose Tomer. Hope he's coming back. Welcome back, Tomer. You talk a little bit about your experience with service bureaus, outsourced partners, just in general, and maybe some people that are new, kind of getting into this or using service bureaus. What you should look for in a partner there or provider. Anyone care to just comment who uses maybe a lot of service bureaus? Kind of your experience with it, the pluses and minuses.
I can't comment too strongly there. I haven't used a ton of them. The only time I've used them is to prove why we should bring this machine in-house, which happened relatively quickly. So I'll defer.
Okay.
I think if you need to use a service bureau, then you need the technology in-house, or you need to increase your capacity. I think with service bureaus, they just take too long, and if you already have in-house capabilities, then your partners tend to expect things within a day or within a couple of days. So if you outsource to a service bureau and you tell them, oh, this will be here in 2 weeks, your partner can potentially say I can have a product made in 2 weeks.
Tomer says that, but he used to work at Shapeways.
I used to work at Shapeways, yeah.
I would say in regards to service bureaus, I mean, there's a great role for them. It's a low barrier entry to the technology. To that end, you probably lose, if you're an experienced user, you lose a little bit of control in the process. So maybe you can have the influence to orient the part how you want. If you're looking at like a powder bed processing, like selective laser sintering, maybe you can ask them to provide specific energy density to the layer. But really, you do lose a lot of the control in that process. That being said, it's a great way to dip your toe into the field without having to invest lots of money. And for the large capital stuff we've done in the past, we've definitely utilized several partners, several vendors, and looked at everything that they've made comparatively to have an understanding of lots of people using this type of technology. What are they doing with it? Not just one group. That would be one thing I would say to look at too, is compare several of these service providers against each other. Because I think we all know, like, two machines don't make the same part every time. So two providers using different machines aren't going to make the same part every time. So cast a wide net.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the challenges in as we look to scale production right through additive manufacturing. We do a lot of work with the government, for example, and there's a pretty major initiative going on called sustainment, where they're looking to sustain older vehicles and aircraft and deployable manufacturing around the world, and getting deployed printers in different locations to produce the same part every time, is something that's being worked on pretty heavily, but still something that is before us, a problem to solve, but there's no question we're making really nice progress against it. Let's get back to kind of the prototyping and design, and then we'll get to some questions here, Janet, if you've got any coming in. But the functional versus design, where do you guys spend most of your time today working? Which side of that equation, function versus design, and how do you see that evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? And this gets back to kind of an earlier question about what's needed if you're spending most of your time today in design, but boy, your customers really want more functional capabilities. What's required to get there? And the inverse, if you're today focused on more functional versus design. Anyone care to comment or start?
Yeah, I can start there. I would say my daily routine includes design. Almost every other day, I would say I'm printing something to show designers and product creation colleagues of mine. But I'm always poking at the functional parts. So like I said, the innovations in metal and carbon are what'll change our industry. It's just that golf ball impact is really violent. So, we need really strong materials and really robust, reliable materials to withstand that impact and withstand thousands of impacts. So that's the area where I'm still exploring. So we've made some flexible parts that are functional, certain components, but we haven't really broken through to make a functional golf head. That's the challenge.
Golf can definitely be a violent sport, not just with the club hitting the ball.
Yeah, it can.
Tomer or Dan?
Yeah, I'll go. So I've been at New Balance almost 10 years now, and I started really heavily in the design side. Even being an engineer, not necessarily a design engineer, but building out the process in order for us to do functional prototyping. Over the years, my career has gone totally to the functional side. So my team, we completely focus on bringing this stuff to commercialization. That being said, we still have a giant internal service bureau that provides RP models to the company. But I think, forward thinking, we look at this as a great way to make some bespoke product.
For us, it's generally aesthetic, depending on what the object is. But we also prototype a lot of hardware, so they use that to validate for functionality. And sometimes you print something and you could say you could see right away that it wouldn't work. Like maybe the lock will not be able to be released from the hasp, is one example that you could validate with the 3D print. Those are mainly what we use for both aesthetic and functional.
Okay. Any before I kind of get to the last question, which is that I prepared anyway, which is kind of a dreamy one. Anything that you guys would like to add, just free flowing here to a forum that obviously is using additive manufacturing for prototyping, experiences that you guys want to share, or you've got probably a community here of OEMs or material developers in the audience as well. How can the industry help you guys? We talked a little bit about kind of the need, Tomer, you mentioned, for post-processing work, right, to try and eliminate that and make it more efficient. Dan, you mentioned kind of more materials, open new applications, which obviously companies like Stratasys and all of the OEMs are working with material developers every day to drive that. And in fact, here at Stratasys, we've changed our model just in the last couple of years from really being what people in the industry call a closed system or proprietary materials to now more of our technologies are open systems, and so we can try and advance material development faster. But you guys have been in the industry for a while. You're using the technology and prototyping. My last question is going to be kind of in 20 years from now, what do you think is possible with additive? But any comments or kind of open forum here you want to share or asks of the industry, and including Link, obviously, who's trying to bring additive together into a kind of viable manufacturing environment or platform.
Jeff, I'm not just going to say make it cheaper, but
you might as well lead with it.
Yeah, but in seriousness, you hit on something that's very key, is that transition in the business case or the closed model for the OEMs. I think moving to open materials, open processing on machines, being able to have a company like Link 3D network into a machine and send prints directly. I think this kind of integration is what's really needed to move this process, or to move this industry forward. I think, obviously costs and stuff will drop as volumes pick up, whatever. I was just saying that as a joke, but really opening up and making this an open, interactive, interconnected community where I could go to Henkel or BASF and get a material formulated on a Formlabs or a Carbon machine, and then have Link 3D send prints to those machines. I think that kind of ecosystem is necessary.
Do you feel that it's heading that direction, Dan, or do you not see that yet?
Oh, it's definitely going in that direction. You referenced Stratasys is changing. You've seen other players come into the market that are open, totally open on material concepts if they're a hardware company, or if they're a materials company, obviously they're looking to work with any hardware company they can. So it's definitely moving in that direction, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just to comment on that, real quick, kind of from our perspective, one of the challenges in the early days was we talked about consistency and the expectation for consistency and reliability, and there was such a close tie to optimizing the print. It is oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, almost always requires a close kind of a collaboration between the material and the hardware, right? To get consistent results out. And so I think in the early days, it was easier for OEMs just to control that process. Now I think we're all kind of learning pretty quickly that we've got to work with partners much more closely, like the BAS of the world, Henkels of the world, to develop those materials in order to accelerate kind of application opportunities. But not always easy to do, or you just open it up and leave it completely to the customer. But I think 5-10 years ago, there were very few customers who actually had the expertise to understand how to do that. But that's also rapidly changing. So I think part of it is just kind of a maturation of customers, the technology and experience. But Chris or Tomer, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about materials, it would be interesting to see more sustainable options. I think you know, when you talk about 3D printing or you hand off like a 3D print, like a lot of people, a lot of partners get hung up on the fact that it's plastic, and then they ask you questions without looking beyond the fact that it's a piece of plastic. So you have to explain them, you know, that inherently like it's sustainable by only making what we need to, and not making full on samples or prototypes. You avoid using like other types of raw materials by being able to like catch your mistakes early on and things like that. But you know, like I think a lot of companies right now have very big sustainability goals, so it would be cool to talk about that as well.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, we you know, we talk about cost per part. You know, Dan, I think for those that don't know, aligners today are almost 100% 3D printed, and that's the you know, Smile Directs, Clear Corrects that we all see advertised kind of now, and the getting to a direct print of those aligners is critical, kind of from a sustainability perspective. Right now, there's a lot of models and molds that we're frankly using to that are being thrown away, which is obviously wasteful. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say manufacturers in the space keep surprising me with things I didn't know I wanted, which is so more of that, please. You know, you see these resins come out that are, you know, first it was just plastic, and then I was like, oh, flexible, cool. Oh, castable wax, cool. Oh, dental, what are they doing in dental? You can have someone at home make a mold and send it to me, and then I can use that. So that's really cool in the personal customizable space. So just iterations on all of that stuff is what I'm looking forward to. And then it's what designs can I make that traditional manufacturing can't make, which is what we're all after, right? That's what would be an end product for the consumer, is when you can make an additive golf club that performs better than a traditionally made one, that's when it'll be a compelling product. So the stuff there, you know, what can't be made with traditional tooling, everyone's New Balance. I know you guys have started dabbling in all the lattices and lattice software. I'm just kind of scratching the surface there, but that sort of stuff is what I think will drive the next 5-10 years of product.
Yeah, how far off do you think that is, Chris? We'll get into kind of the last question, then open it up if there's any questions from the audience. But you know, 15, 20 years from now, do you believe that we'll be producing customized clubs? I mean, obviously there are today, but they're from kind of set heads and grips and shafts. But you think we'll actually be printing personalized golf clubs?
I hope so. I mean, that seems like the most obvious, compelling use case to the customer, and it's clear that people want that sort of product. So we're going to try our best to get one out there.
Are there composite heads today, Chris, or are they all still metal?
Well, if you look at the product this year, you know, more than 50% of the surface area is carbon. So it's it's getting there where you could call it a composite head more than a metal head these days for most brands.
That's cool. Tomer, where do you see fashion going in 20 years? And by the way, I'm going to do some little ad hoc. Well, I may grab we're printing with PolyJet actually on clothing now, so I may grab something and show everybody. But appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to see that. I hope you know, like fashion is really big on personalization, so hope to see more of that. I personally don't have much visibility to these initiatives in the company, since I mostly manage the prototyping, but we'll see. I think a lot of companies are doing real cool things with personalized fashion stuff, and I think maybe Dan could speak to it too, because they did some really cool end use 3D printed stuff.
This is 3D printed.
So does it have a like texture?
Yep.
Cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's awesome.
Pretty good colors too. Anyway, we can follow up after Tomer on that. But Dan, what are your thoughts?
Just where we're going to be in 10, 15 years. Certainly, there's going to be some level of customized production direct to a consumer. I don't think
today. Isn't there today, Dan? In
so
printed shoes?
Yeah, not in the printed game. So I mean, you can go on all of the websites and get aesthetically customized stuff, colors, unique stitching for names, that sort of thing.
Yep.
I think the ability to customize to the individual is there. It's just none of the brands have made it commercial yet. It's really difficult to do. And there's a lot of nuance to it that makes it very difficult to do. So certainly, I think within the next 15 years, that application will have been picked. Brands will be doing that type of work. And then in the additive field, there's probably going to be a level of consolidation. I think you see a lot of big brands coming into the space in the last couple of years, and HP and Xerox and Ricoh and Canon. And I think these groups are going to be looking to broaden portfolios, and they're going to be much more competitive with the players that have been in the space so far. And hopefully that drives the whole field to being lower cost, higher quality, because that's what you'd need to get if you want to compete with injection or compression molding for serial production.
Nope, no question about it. All right, excellent. Thank you, everyone. We can, I guess, open it up to questions or any last comments. Janet, I've been kind of watching the chat box here to see if there's any questions coming in. But if you have them, please text.
Jeff,
in the chat box.
Jeff, if you don't mind clicking to the Q&A tab, right? Chat participants Q&A.
Thank you, Janet. It's a new platform. Okay, so can you guys see the questions?
Mm-hmm.
I can.
Excellent. Greetings from Amsterdam. Chris and Dan, can you briefly share the impact value to the end customer?
I think the value to the end customer will be someday, if that customer values customization, that'll be the value. At the moment, we are trying to drive costs down internally with prototyping. So that's a tricky one. I don't think it's immediately there, but I hope it's coming.
Yeah, well, for me, I think when we talk about value, I don't want to put a monetary amount to this. Really, the value is a more robustly designed product that you're getting to your customer faster. You can turn internally many more times using this technology on a design in a shorter amount of time and get something better designed out. I think that's really, if there's a core value, which is hard to put a dollar or any monetary amount to, that would be it.
Yeah, I don't know I could quantify the value, but it's definitely in reduction of overall cost and speed to market.
Yeah, more design cycles. It's hard to put a number or to quantify. Hey, it looks better than it probably would have if we had been using traditional methods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. Sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get. We had a data design workflow that we championed, and we used it to customize for 3D. But in the end, it was used by inline teams to create our fresh film product, which we now sell 10 million pair a year. So you really don't know what you're going to get when you're playing around in the additive space, because it's just fun R&D.
I'm just reading the questions because we're going to run out of time, but I'm going to combine. It looks like a couple, which I do think is very relevant. How are you guys? I'm going to combine these. How are you guys basically marketing yourselves internally as a lab? Do you do internal road shows? Do you market yourselves with posters on the wall, et cetera? How do you propagate the use of your capabilities?
Yeah, we do. we do lunch and learns. We do I tour. So I give tours of our capabilities. Some people are very surprised to know that we have those in-house. And then show, don't just tell, show your work. Yeah. And focus not only on what capabilities you have, but what's out there, what's the potential, because if there's proper investment, you could do more than what you have in-house, depending on your setup.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I do a ton of campaigning. Most of my requests come from people who have seen parts that just circulate through the office. So word of mouth, I'd say, is the biggest way that I have more people at the company interested in printing on the machines that I use. And it's been compelling to our Asia teams as well. We've a couple teams over there have seen what we did here in California and have purchased machines of their own. So the parts speak for themselves.
Chris, when you say they purchased machines of their own, are you seeing, and I guess kind of a question for all of you, as we've kind of, this industry's gotten started and companies have adopted the technology, they've all kind of, at least from my perspective, most have started with a lab, maybe a couple of labs in different facilities, depending on the size of the organization. But designers, engineers have come to them. Are you now seeing, Chris, is this what you're saying, that those designers and engineers are becoming more and more familiar with the technology and buying equipment on their own, putting them right in the office space? How are you seeing that evolve?
Yeah, our industrial design team has made it clear that they want machines, and our manufacturing teams, both here and overseas, have seen the capability and added to their own teams with machines as well.
And in that scenario, and Tomer and Dan, I'll get to you in a second. In that scenario, how are they sharing best practices and knowledge internally? Is there a central kind of organization or structure or community on a Slack channel, or how?
Yeah, it's pretty much a community on a Slack channel. Choose your messenger platform, but it's pretty much community based with a small group of people, 12 people, okay. 15 people.
Yeah, for us, my team is the only team that 3D prints. So we 3D print for everyone. So we are the center of knowledge. So if people need something, they come to us, and if they ask for things that are with limitations, then we explained it to them. We offer them alternative solutions. If it's not possible, we'll recommend how to redesign something in a way that's possible for it to be manufactured. And we don't only 3D print, we also 3D model. So we have that knowledge as well that we could help them. Okay.
Dan?
Yeah, for us, it's really education and communication. So we've done things like road shows back when there were people in offices that you could go see. We've done lunch and learns. We actually wrote a curriculum for new engineers and designers that come in that walks them through these processes, how we've used them traditionally, and what types of materials, aesthetic, mechanical properties, timeline, what you can expect from these processes. Hopefully trying to level set expectations right off the bat. And you're also training everyone new that's coming in the same manner. In regards to how we operate, everything is in one spot. So we do have the same users working the machines. And again, consistency, reliability of what's coming out, and making sure that you're always following best practices for each process. That's why we've done that.
And so at this point, you don't see shoe designers with the New Balance wanting 3D printing into their space so they can kind of innovate even faster?
I wouldn't say that they wouldn't want it in their space. I would say that we are providing an appropriate level of service that they don't need to have it in their space.
Good answer. Excellent. I think we're out of time because the QA questions just disappeared. So seems like we could go on for a while longer. Janet?
Thank you so much for having us here today.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Tomer, Chris, and Dan, thank you guys. It was I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you guys did as well, and hopefully our audience got some value out of it.
Yeah, fun chat, guys. I'm looking forward to checking into the event throughout the day.
No doubt.
Same here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Janet, to Link3D for putting this on.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, Tomer, Chris, and Dan for sharing your secrets or your experiences as to how you can grow and get started with rapid prototyping for consumer product landscape. Hopefully that is very encouraging for the rest of our community as well. So thank you very much, Chris, Dan, Tomer, and Jeff. We really appreciate all of your efforts for advocating for additive in the consumer sector space.